Thank you. Good afternoon, members, officers and viewers. Welcome to the Open Movement Scrutiny Committee meeting. It is being conducted as a hybrid meeting in accordance with the remote meetings protocol and the Council's standing orders to ensure that we continue to make democratic decisions in an open and transparent manner. For those attending remotely, I would remind you that this meeting is being streamed live to the public. So can I remind you to switch up your camera and microphone if not speaking to help to improve the quality of the recordings. Can I ask remote members to switch on their chat function and use this when they wish to speak? Please speak up, as the sound in this particular room is not very good. Please do not speak until I invite you, and remember to switch on your camera and mic. As this is a relatively small meeting, online voting may be required together with a vote of members present in the chamber. So before I declare a vote, I will ensure that all members' votes are collated. As well as being broadcast live, a recording of this meeting will be uploaded to the Council website for public viewing and training within the Council, whilst translation of the meeting can be provided on request. Apologies, please.
We've got a few apologies, Chair, from Councillor Davis, Councillor Baker Westhead, Councillor James, Councillor Mulroney, and Councillor Walton.
Thank you very much. Any declarations of interest at this point? No? Okay, thank you. Minutes of the previous meetings, pages 3 to 8, are taken for accuracy, please. And the rising, page 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Matters rising, please. That's right.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we finally agreed to send a letter to the university to our meeting in September. Do we have an update on their response? Yes.
And I'll chase it, Chair. I don't know. I had an immediate response to them saying we had an internal discussion. I assume it's good to come. I have other things said, so I'll drop the chase it.
Thank you for doing that. Okay, thank you. Any other matters arising? No. No matters arising. Thank you very much. Moving on to the super report, then, please. Annual corporate plans self-assessment report 22-23, and we're looking to decide if there's adequate progress being made and whether there's sufficient information to monitor the achievements of the well-being, optics and effectiveness of its governance and performance arrangements, and consider self-assessments and supporting action plan, and whether we wish to comment further. Who's going to open up? Councillor.
Thank you, Chair and councillors, colleagues. Thank you for inviting us here today to discuss our progress to date. You will note, colleagues, that the process has shifted somewhat. So the self-assessment report will feed into our self-assessment as we go forwards, and this meets the requirements of the new legislation from Welsh Government. So a slightly different approach to reporting back, but actually I think a more effective one, and I'm happy to go through that with you all as we go through the progress. Now, what stands out about our corporate plan, as we've said previously, is that this really is an example of co-production, so it's developed between elected members and officers across the authority and really represents a new approach for Newport. So I'm delighted that we're here and we're able to reflect on that the first year of delivery against the objectives in the plan. And you will, of course, having read through the report and been party to the plan itself, be fully aware that our aspirations for this plan is that we deliver an ambitious, fair and green report for everyone. The report itself is a self-reflection and an assessment of our progress against the corporate plan and lobbying objectives. The overall conclusion is that we've made an encouraging start to the delivery of the corporate plan. We've made some good progress against objectives 2 and 4, but the objectives 1 and 3 do need some further development. And I think it's important to acknowledge these, and we'll have an opportunity to discuss this further, but we're all very critically aware of the pressures that both adult and children's services have placed on service delivery over the last year, and also the issues around homelessness. So we're all very conscious of this. Now, the report, as I'm sure that you've had an opportunity to consider, does highlight some of the successes and the achievements that we've made with our partners. And I think what's really important about this, Chair, is that we emphasise that we can't do this alone. This is very much a reflection of partnership working well, how we come together across the public sector and with some of our private sector partners in order to deliver against these objectives. It has been a challenging period as we come out of COVID and move into the COVID recovery. Of course, we've been faced by the cost of living crisis, and all of this impacts on our ability to deliver services, particularly the inflationary aspects of that, and coupled with the increased demand for our services. So overall, progress is very is positive and very optimistic. Now, the report does also provide an update on the progress of actions in last year's report, as well as some new actions around business improvement. As you know, we've got 4 wellbeing objectives, and I'm sure colleagues would like to speak to these, so I won't linger too long on these, but I would like to highlight some of the key aspects that we've been able to deliver on, and I'm sure the Chief Executive would like to make reference to some of our major projects. But what's really important, I think, is some of the evidence that we're able to demonstrate in terms of our delivery of events across the city centre. And I know elected members have had an opportunity to engage in event delivery. Of course, coming out of the pandemic and back to, well, things aren't the same, are they? But coming out of the pandemic and moving forwards, it's really important for people in Newport that we're able to continue events. So I'm really pleased with the progress that we've made with these, both in terms of leading events ourselves, but also in partnership with others. Now, we're progressing some of our key strategies, such as the placemaking plan, our commitment to becoming a living wage city, our cultural strategy, and our sports strategy. And all of these will help us contribute towards improving the Newport offer to our residents. And I am absolutely delighted to highlight, Chair, that our education service and our schools will continue to work closely together. And last year we saw 2 schools, Newport High and Martha's Church in Wales Primary School, move out of special measures. What a fantastic achievement by those schools, and I think all credit has to go to the head teachers, the governing bodies, and everybody involved in that. Because we must not forget the period that those schools have gone through leading up to that. So that achievement, I think, is something worthy of highlighting. Now, in terms of that wellbeing objective one, what I'd like to do is hand to the Chief Executive, who would like to give an overview of some of the other positives that we'd like to highlight in this report.
Thank you very much, Lina. Just for clarity, page numbering, we're working on the annual corporate plan report. Which one, yeah? So we start on page 1 again. Are you happy to take questions through the report, or do you put this through till the end?
Probably we took them objective chairs, because you're happy with that.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, just check. So just to sort of answer all the context before talking about objective 1. As Lee said, I think we made steady progress on the delivery report plan. This is just year 1. And actually, when I was reflecting on the detail of the annual report, I think it is important to note that whilst there are some challenges, you know, officers, the whole council did an awful lot of work, and there's an awful lot of progress and projects, big projects in delivery. And I think sometimes it's very easy, particularly within public sector service, to kind of forget how challenging times are and how much we're actually achieving. So there are some aspects when I was going through it, really pleased. However, there are some aspects that, as it is said, we need to provide more focus on, and certainly shouldn't rest on our laurels, even when we look at the objectives, which we say are doing really well. You know, the digital strategy, which obviously Reece will talk to very keen to see how that bears fruit over the next 2 to 3 years in terms of the authority's digital provision. I'm sure we all acknowledge we're in unprecedented times in terms of global and national events. As the leader said, Newport's not in a unique position. Not that I want to compare Newport to any other town or city. And if you compare Newport to Bristol and Cardiff, that's comparing apples and pears. But visiting those cities, very much similar challenges to what the city of Newport faces on a daily basis. And I think in terms of the areas that the leader mentioned, housing, adult and children's services, it's those services that are providing support to the most vulnerable, and those services which are targeting the sustainable economic growth of the city centre are the services and the objectives which we are finding ourselves in the most challenging times. From a performance management, risk management perspective, we've also as an officer team to support obviously Cabinet and Council, we've introduced some new performance management systems in terms of challenge reviews. So in addition to the Scrutiny function, we use an officer team on a quarterly basis, and we go through every red area of performance on a granular level to really try to understand what and how services respond to those particular challenges. The leaders highlighted some of the successes. So we'll keep those, other than to say, obviously, we've also seen significant investment in a full discount. So, the sort of community for learning programme in terms of the capital aspects of education progressing really well, as are some of our major projects in the city centre. Regeneration, I speak from very personal experience, it's hard. It's a long-term game, members know that. So, nothing's ever easy in the regeneration world. So, it's pleasing to see that some of that is progressing as well as it can be currently. In terms of the performance indicators, obviously you'll see there are, on this particular objectives, there are 3 or 1 that's showing red, and then you have 2 that are currently amber. Needs, we've, as an authority over the last decade, have done really, really well in terms of numbers for in year 13, non-education, training and employment. So still we're performing well against the Welsh average, but have just come under our local target that we set. And the young person's guarantee, which is currently an amber, that's a major target. So I think with a renewed sort of impetus on that one in particular, there's every chance of meeting that target year end. And then obviously the one indicates red is the visitor numbers, but as the leader mentioned earlier, visitor numbers, not just in Newport, they're not recovering at a national level at this point in time. It's just the cost of living crisis and the unprecedented challenges that we find ourselves in.
Excuse me, Councillor Cox, did you want to come in on the visitor numbers?
I just wanted to ask how you come up with that number.
It's a national indicator, Councillor Cox.
Is it because I've got to notice I was quite surprised to see a figure of 4 million, but if you compare it with other visiting figures from other towns, it just seemed very, very large. I mean, places like Manchester are getting about, I don't know, about 1.7 million visitors, and Newport was fucking 4. I just couldn't.
It's I'd have to refer back to the service area for the actual detailed source of that. But we normally, as local authorities, from recollection, I was head of service, we normally take those figures from a system called Steam.
What scheme?
Steam. So I don't know steam engines, but it's not nothing to do with the steam. There's a source of data that's provided and gives us information.
And that's based on stays in hotels, is it basically?
That wouldn't be just on hotels, that would be visitors related to.
It's called Steam.
Yeah, so Steam is the actual source of data. Well, certainly when I was head of service, that's what we used to use. But I can clarify that with the service. I think that's it. The rest of the information I don't intend to go through it verbatim. It's there for members to be considered. So yeah, happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Hudson,
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just reflecting, going back on this, the first objective here is we will have a robust economic strategy. And marked with green.
Now, I'm not sure, can't find the update of the city centre master plan, so I'm not quite sure how we can make a comparison, because it doesn't seem to be updated since 2018. We also talked there about the major investments in the city and support the local entrepreneurs. Now, I appreciate we're not Cardiff or Bristol or Manchester or Bath or Birmingham. I've been to all these cities recently, and they've all got a massive amount of projects. And I'm looking at Newport, and the reference in here to the key regeneration projects finished. We've got two: the upgrade to Central Library, okay, fair enough, and the hotel, which is very welcome and very cool. But I can't see any major developments in the city centre. We've got empty buildings like the Admiral, which I appreciate is privately owned. We've got the unfinished offices behind the railway station. And I just feel we're not doing all we can. It's not imaginative. We're not showing ambition. I mean, we've got reference to we've given funding to a pool bar. Well, you know, I'm sorry, I wouldn't necessarily put that in the report as being something which is a great ambitious project. And if you actually look at the one thing that shocked me the most is we've got a massive convention centre and the Celtic Manor on our doorstep. And all these Celtic Manor bring tens of thousands of business people to this area. And I can't see anything in here about using our imagination, working with something like the Celtic Manor, getting these visitors. I don't care if we pay a couple £100 to entertain them in the city centre, that would be good value. And there's actually reference, I think it's on page, well, I've got two copies of this one in London, page 59, which talks about engagement with businesses in Newport. In 2022-23, I had to read this several times to make sure they're right. Newport engaged and involved businesses through the following activities: general responding to business inquiries from the NCT business service box, including, it looks like, property inquiries, funding inquiries. I don't know if there's zeros or just there's nothing by them. But there's nothing in here about what we've actually done. So it's on, we'll have to get the system sorted out. On page 59 of the one report I'm reading. Other one it'd be a different page, I'm afraid, but it's there's anything can help.
It'll be 58 of the report itself. When they bring that to
I'm not sure if those are just zero object wrong tops on there. But the point is we haven't got any examples of successes in there. We haven't got anything in there to say what we're doing. And I think it's really important that we list the amount of businesses who have gone forward, property inquiries, funding inquiries. So I can't believe there's zero or zero. There must be just wrong dots on there. But I think it's really important that we take that on board and stuff out there. But at the same time, there are opportunities. There are companies downsizing, companies moving out of expensive places in Bristol or things like this. So we should be our opportunity to try and get them. And continuing on, I noticed when we're talking about the at the end, we're talking about the corporate plan. We haven't got anything about this in the areas for recruitment. So, it is something close to my heart. It is something which a thriving city centre is vital for everything, really. I just think we're not doing enough to attract the investment which we desperately need.
Can I help you a little bit, Councillor Evans, with this before we flip it out? On page 6 of the report, it talks about us being awarded 27 million from the shared prosperity fund. And although this work is not due to start until 2023-24, might it help to give us some of your forward plans, even though this report is on the previous year?
Well, I'm sure it'll be very helpful and welcome the Marines from there. These are actual comments on the report as it stands at the moment.
I think these I would probably respond to any questions.
So, if I may,
Thank you.
with regard to an economic strategy, you will, colleagues who attend this committee will be aware that we have got an economic growth strategy, which is a separate document to this, and it's a separate document to the city centre master plan. I'd like to make a point about the city centre master plan, as it's been raised here today, because I think it's a really fair point from Councillor Evans in terms of there not being an overarching update on that. But I would like to emphasise, Chair, if I may, that progress against the objectives in the service plans are regularly reported to all of our scrutiny committees, and that information is widely available for elected members and members of the public. So I think it's a note Councillor Evans' comments with regards to no overarching update on that, but an assurance that to elected members that information is regularly reported and your colleagues scrutinise those through the scrutiny committees. I do want to pick up some of the aspects of economic development. Now, one aspect of this, of course, is the local development plan, and you will all be aware we've recently gone to council and presented our preferred sites strategy and our preferred strategy going forward, which was agreed by full council, and that work will continue to develop. We also mentioned at council, I think, and in fact, I think Councillor Bright asked a question about the Cardiff Capital Region and the role that they play in terms of economic growth across the region. And we need to understand, I think, that when we're talking about economic growth, that we're not just talking about Newport City Council as a standalone entity, it's also about our relationship with the Cardiff Capital Region. For example, the most significant investment that the Cardiff Capital Region has made has been in the compound semiconductor sector here in Newport. And also our relationship with Western Gateway, that wider cross-border partnership. Because it's these different levels that actually help us to secure significant investment here in Newport. I'm sure you will be delighted as we were with the announcement that Microsoft are coming to Newport, having made significant investment. And I think that's something to be very proud of in these difficult economic times, that as an international brand, which is known to everybody, has chosen to locate near Newport. We're also pleased, and it's in this report around strategic priority 2, we're very pleased that KLA have decided to expand here in Newport, so moving from one site to another, but also to focus their European activities here in Newport. I think that sends a really positive message about the positive working relationship between Newport City Council, major international companies, and of course the Welsh Government, who've also supported this as well. Now, if we turn to focus on the city centre, one of the interesting things about the city centre, and I think everybody accepts this, is the significant shift that we've seen with regard to retail. And that is happening everywhere, isn't it? We've seen a decline of retail across the whole of the UK, as we would traditionally understand it. Nonetheless, here in Newport, we've seen an expansion of small independent businesses, and our business support did a lot of work to support them. And we've recently launched, as you mentioned, Chair, our business support grants, which is more significant for business development, which are funded through the Shared Prosperity Fund. So we are very hopeful about this going forward. I would point out, though, as a council, as a cabinet, we've made a decision, and we've taken this to council, to provide rates relief for city centre businesses. When this is coupled with the rates relief provision the Welsh Government provides for businesses, this means that eligible businesses within the city centre area do not have to pay business rates. So as well as providing support, advice and guidance, access to funding, access to grants, we're also ensuring that we create the best possible financial environment that we can for our businesses within the city centre. And just reflecting on that shift from retail to other types of businesses and other types of activity, we've seen a significant proportion of the city centre turned into residential, a number of flats and homes above our businesses within the city centre. And we're also moving forward with that placemaking plan. And the placemaking plan is critically important in terms of accessing the views of not just elected members and officers within the authority or our businesses, but the citizens of Newport, and asking them how they would like to see the city centre develop in future. And I look forward to that work progressing, Chair. I'm sure the Chief Executive would like to continue that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think just coming back, the need to reference the various plans that are currently in development, and particularly the economic growth strategy, which is it sets out the various pillars, and obviously the corporate plan, like other plans it interrelates to. That's very much a key strand of the corporate plan focus of the remaining 4 years of its life. I think the KLA story for us, part of the Commonwealth Semiconductor cluster. Out at Imperial Park, 750 jobs, and if I've certainly spoken to the team at KLA on a regular basis, and the feedback we get from them about us as an authority and our hand-holding approach is second to none. And as I said, as I've gone through the report, there are things that probably do need to be writ a little bit larger in terms of the successes. It doesn't have to be talk about the 750 well-paid jobs. Yeah, it talks about KLA. Suppose we go into the link. There's further information there. I think and always open to challenge on any aspect, and it's always a balancing act within the corporate plan and our reports. Because if we say, well, we're absolutely amazing, we're doing everything superbly, well, clearly there's always challenges, there's clearly always more towards kind of certain side. But in terms of business engagement, we're part of the Business in the Community programme, which is that steering group is chaired by Simon Gibson. So Newport, very much that is business led. We've got the Business Improvement District, we've got Newport, we've got the Newport Business Club, we've got the M4 Business Club, and in addition to that, members, but also officers on a regular basis to meet with key city centre businesses and key city centre investors. Clearly, some of that can't be put into the report because some of those good parties ask us for confidentiality through those conversations. So, I said at the beginning that city centre regeneration is not easy. It's not, thanks to Councillor Evans for acknowledging that. Councillor Evans, I also talk about that on a regular basis. So, just to show committee that in terms of some of our empty buildings in the city centre, we are engaged in conversations. But as I said, other city centres are in very similar positions to us. What we do need, so when I've said again, said this to committee, but it's even more prevalent now given the current economic circumstances, is that retail, as Lee said, is done. And that's not just in city centres, that's starting to impact on retail parks as well. I was listening to a media announcement last week. So it's got to be about repurposing and changing the use of the city centre. It's got to be about leisure, it's got to be about learning, and it's got to be about working to get that footfall up in the city centre for the long-term future. I was in Newport on last Saturday evening and also on Sunday morning, so seeing it firsthand. So it's not, we want to make the city better, but it's a long-term job.
Thank you.
Can I just come back? I'm not disagreeing with what's been said. But I forgot to mention university, of course, which you did last year and will continue to raise about the lack of students living and in the city centre, which is going to be a sort of future priority. Why can't we attract offices into city centre? We've got great links, and I appreciate their for the last 10 years, you've seen massive developments going up in Cardiff and Bristol, still building offices in around the UK. So why can't we seem to attract, because that's a critical part, getting people to live and work in there. And also we've got the Q hotel, which is great. But why haven't we got any more city centre quality hotels? I'm not talking about, you know, the one which opened opposite Boots with junkies, right in the middle of the main street. You've got junkies out there all day. We should be shutting those down. Surely we can, you know, attract some major chains of hotels into the city centre.
Just comment on that, Councillor Evans. We had a briefing from the police this morning about that very hotel that we were talking about and all the good things they're doing to try and remedy the issues, as I think they describe as the Boss Hotel.
So that's one on Corporation Road.
No.
Oh, the one opposite.
Yeah,
Well, wait, so it's been open for like 2 years, and I'm just using it. We've got a prime city centre, we've got main streets, 5 minute walk for us, and how we allowed each other. That's not really the point. The point is talking about quality for 5-star hotels and that.
We are engaged in discussion with different companies, but I'd like to go back to the point that the Chief Executive made. These are at different levels of progress, and we have to respect commercial confidentiality.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Brooks.
No, like we just address the points I was going to raise. We'll talk about the CJC and how that's going to affect the city. But yeah, you covered those points. Not on get one. No.
Well, I think, you know, this is your opportunity to go into the second round. If you finish with the report,
In terms of objective, by the chair, I guess.
okay, thank you. Chairman of the House.
That's what surprised people who heard me talk about this before, that I was interested in what the reference to heritage. And clearly heritage is part of that will be an objective. It's one of the strategic priorities. What I mean, the point I wanted to ask basically was that I think we all accept, don't we, that Newport's got this incredible potential in terms of a heritage offer. I mean, I was talking to some academic last week that specialises in Rome, the history of Rome. And he said you can't write a book about the Roman army without mentioning Calais. You know, you just can't do it. And so we've got things that are unique. We've got the ship. We sometimes forget as well. We've got the historic vessels as well, the Roman, Celtic boat, and etc. And I just think it's a really good news story that needs a bit more prominence in here. And you know, obviously, I think we're all pleased as well that things are starting to move ahead. That I know the council now are actively engaged people to try and find the site for the ship. There's a recent group been set up between the council and CADU and the National Museum looking to put forward a plan for Calais. And I just thought it was a real shame that's not in here. And I mean, so for example, if you look at on page 13 at key deliverables, there's none of that is mentioned, and it just seems to me that is a real deliverable that is actually in process, and we can realistically look forward to achieving that should be in there.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Fox. I think, as well as obviously the challenges and that come from the scrutiny that we need to respond to, I think it's we also need to respond to when there's positive comment of that. Maybe we do need to insert it. We're all very guilty of, I think, of hiding the light under a bushel.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's a fair point, and I'll make sure that's picked up with the team before this progresses on its next journey.
This question might be more relevant to section 3 that we've already mentioned. So you say you have a quarterly then we read area, which obviously is lower. But what flexibility do you have to improve visual areas that consider most immediate attention?
So I think speaking with my corporate hat on rather than sort of any specific objective, clearly that's something that we discuss as part of the budget setting process as the senior officer team, and then those conversations we begin then with members as part of the budget setting process. But again, I think committee will be aware that sort of government public sector in general throughout the UK is really struggling currently. So it's about finding the right balance, isn't it, to deliver our ambition, but while setting a balanced budget. I'm sure if our head of finance was here, that's also what he'd be saying.
So currently, looking to well-being objective to
Yes, okay, check.
You might give an introduction actually, if you want to. So overall on objective to consider ourselves to be good for the last financial year, but there are a number of significant ongoing challenges around achieving net zero, and in terms of highway infrastructure and delivery of sustainable housing. So all challenges which we need to take on going forward, as our reflections of the rest that we see. It's been a good year of progress. Recycling remains above target, and we see changes this year in that, which will get us about the 70% recycling rate. Our two parks retain their green flag, and we've also achieved Tree City of the World status. If I'm honest, I'm still not quite sure what that is. For the one of 168 cities across the entire world. So we've been significant investment in active travel. Really pleasing to open the footbridge across the station. That I know has been for the last decade. Desire and levels in particular. That's when I started this job, so it's really good to see some of these really incredibly difficult projects delivered. Also, just active travel, we've managed to use that money to improve the Montreal Brecon Canal up through the Bettis Malpas leg as well. We are continuing to make good progress on net zero. To the electrification of our fleet, and this has also helped us with our air quality, which has improved year on year for the last 3 years, and we'll shortly see a number of our AQMEs coming out of monitored status. As mentioned, the reds, so viewing in the highway status, so the highway asset is deteriorating slightly faster rate than we would like, and also there's a red in there for our roll of our parks investment. That's purely been down to the fact that obviously Cabinet decided to invest a significant sum in replacing and improving our play areas, something that is is included in. However, we've decided to do that through a lot more consultation engagement with the local community around the wards. It's taken a little bit longer than we would like to get rolling, but now it's rolling with full force. So where those rolling out, there's rapid improvement of that over the next year. Any questions on the objective?
Yeah, please.
Okay, thank you. Well, it's often said in being a councillor that the two hot topics are dog's mess and potholes. Thank you, the councillors tackled dog mess for the public safety protection of last year. But the potholes and roads are a major thing. So, you did mention the jump from 2.3% to 4.8%. So that's maybe down to lack of allocated funds, or what's the main driving factor? Is a deterioration of the road. It's challenging. We need to remember that our highway asset is our largest single asset. It's massive. It's all the roads, all the carriageways, the lighting columns, the electrification system underneath that supports it. Our bridges, our structures, our culverts, there's a lot going on there. It's a very expensive asset. It's over £100 million worth of maintenance that we need to do on that we would like to do, but we can't. Everything else worth over £1 billion. So, with capital funding being tight, obviously the council has limited choice of what it can spend. So the amount that we spend, we'd always planned and it had always been accepted that there would be deterioration. It's happened slightly more in A&P roads, but on the flip side, slightly less on C roads. Overall, it's about in line with our hand. So our highway asset management plan will be renewed next year. I believe that's coming to scrutiny next month or so.
It's next. It's after Christmas, I think. After Christmas.
But I think the important thing is we do, it's to make choices. Any investment in that infrastructure is incredibly expensive. It doesn't come cheap. And so it does mean that there's a deterioration, and naturally there's a deterioration in the asset. The less investment we do in servicing replacement means that you're going to get more potholes. If you look in terms of our inspection regime, though, actually we're doing well in terms of inspecting and rectification. We may not be delivering satisfaction, but at least we're making sure that the asset is safe. And so that's what we can do in the existing funding arrangement. But it's a challenge for all the councils.
Legal and then Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add to the Strategic Director's response to Councillor White's question. The Cabinet recognises managers around this, and you will recall that earlier this year, that when considering the allocation of the underspend, the Cabinet did make the decision to allocate significant resource to improving highways.
Thank you, and I obviously welcome that because it's not really time for money when you're running up and somebody comes along, it's impossible there, and 3 days later they can replace something 500 yards down the road. I'm just interested why you haven't talked about pavements, because I try and walk around every day and the pavements are in pretty poor condition. But I think it's important that we do actually recognise the pedestrians of pavements, so why aren't they in the...
You're correct, and so the highways are national indicators. Most of our compulsory what we maintain them. We do so the system for scoring these. I'm not going to get this technically right, so I don't know if highways is watching. There's a machine goes down 5 lasers, and that gives them some number that tells them if it's like. We do that for highway. I do that for motorways now as well, so we haven't got that information. So that is something that we could consider putting in the future. It's just never been an indicator. There's always been a concentration on carriageway itself. You're right. Motorways is just as important, and obviously we're just trying to encourage active travel. It is an important aspect. So in that way, that's something to consider. And then we give that plate on that. If
I might, you mentioned the canal and through recent value, has there been any cross-border discussions that we talk about them on the Western Canal, Italy, I suppose, about the things that are needed to make these continuous canals? Obviously, the problem being the Newport canal, where they blocked the canal, and on Western Valley, the lack of water.
The lack of water is well, it's locking the water, and it does cause this problem. There's quite frequent communication. One of the things we're trying to do to deal with the lack of water is project one this year's not done it, but in terms of improved lighting, and that's where retains the water, it's going to get better because we'll see it. But we are in conversation with our neighbours about how to make it more effective. I mean, actually including some of the work that was done. Obviously, that was because of collaboration. Because rather than going online where coal line ends and we start, we did that as a project. So we get on that. And we need to do more of that. And we're all actively involved with the Canal and River Trust as well. But this bigger investment that we're trying to put into the whole canal system will start to be delivered over the next year. So yeah, I believe that as well. So it's a great asset for us.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you expect we move into check your screen now?
Be happy to inspect. Yeah. This will be Sally. John Morley, just for a little Morley.
Hi, and apologies because my voice is really quite croaky, so if I suddenly disappear, that'll be why. So thank you. Just to quickly go through strategic objective 3, and I suppose the leaders already mentioned some of the challenges in relation to adult social care and children's social care and the pressures that they place within the system. So and again, many on the committee have heard versions of this discussion in other scrutiny and other meetings, so I'm not giving you new messages in relation to that. I suppose one of the things that I would stress is that in both adult and children's social care, despite the challenges, what we saw last year was a continued ability to deliver residential and domiciliary care. And despite the pressures, the relationships that we have with a number of the providers are very strong. Not always easy to work those relationships and consistently be able to deliver, but our numbers of outstanding hours and outstanding packages of residential and domiciliary care in the end were consistently low throughout the year. And in terms of what that means for citizens of Newport, that is hugely important in terms of timely delivery of good care and support for people to remain within their communities, really important. And in children's social care, again, I think all will be well versed in terms of some of the challenges that children throughout education and in all of our communities still experience as fallout from COVID and cost of living crisis. And yet, despite that, the numbers of children that we see who become looked after in Newport is still below the national average. And I think that pays testament to the kind of services that we're able to provide to support children to remain with their families safely. And that's hugely important. I think just sort of running through a kind of couple of the elements that we've got, I would want to touch on Eliminate in particular, and the challenges that we are seeing as a council with the particular programme from Welsh Government. Newport was already relatively well placed in relation to Eliminate because we have a very high standard of residential care for our children, but we are continuing to work in this area to really develop quality accommodation and also to support our foster carers in the most effective way. We are leading a regional team in relation to Eliminate, and I think that whilst last year we saw some slow progress in terms of being able to get that team out of the starting blocks, I think we are now beginning to see some pace really in relation to how we drive that agenda forward. But the placement market for children last year and going into this year is immensely challenging in terms of how do we effectively support children in best quality placements. And that is going to continue to be a really big challenge for children's services over the coming months. I think preventions and inclusion obviously was a new area within the restructure of the council, and I think we've seen some really good progress in building some resilience across those teams. Two of the things just to highlight would be the work towards the bronze quality mark for the youth service, and we're now working towards the silver quality mark for the youth service. But it's also about recognising using the resources that we have for the youth service effectively in terms of targeted delivery, but also moving that delivery effectively to meet where there's need across the city, which is really important. And we've also seen a significant expansion of our Flying Start provision, so that's for some of our very youngest children. We have a really strong network of Flying Start provision with really strong morale in terms of what's offered. Our expansion in terms of Welsh language provision for Flying Start has been lower than we would have liked, and it's an area that we're going to have to continue and we must stress. But we have gradually been able to see some expansion and increased number of providers in that area. I think in terms of homelessness, I'll hand over to Paul. I don't know whether or not we want to take questions as a whole on this section at the end or whether to split it up.
If we can take the questions as we go along. Before I go on questions, could I ask you to explain about elimination, because it's a new thing. When you mentioned it a couple of times.
Yeah, so Eliminate is part of the Welsh Government's programme for government to end the profit in children's social care. And the two areas where this particularly impacts is in children's residential care and children's fostering. So just by way of an example, we currently have at any one time in the region of between 18 and 20 children who are placed with private residential providers in Wales from Newport. And from 2026 initially, and then from 2027, those providers will no longer be able to register to deliver services. And in fostering currently, we have 44 children who are placed with independent fostering agencies. So those are private businesses that deliver fostering services. Again, as part of the programme for government, the legislation is currently being drafted to end the ability of those organisations to operate in Wales. And in tandem, the drafted legislation will mean that Welsh local authorities cannot purchase placements with for-profit organisations in England or Wales. So it's a sort of double approach, really. It's ending the ability for organisations to operate, but also for us to buy those placements over the border. I mean, this is very much part of the programme of government. It's a key driver in terms of the radical transformation of children's social care in Wales. We have had substantial grant money to work on how we can develop our services further, but it is challenging because the placements world is challenging. The rights and wrongs of it's about how we make it work and how we face the challenges going forward is what we really need to concentrate on.
Thank you very much, Gwen. I'm sure the viewers will be particularly grateful for that. So before we move on to homelessness, questions from Ms. Jenkins?
Well, I just wanted to reiterate this point because, you know, potentially this will have a devastating effect on investment and on the lives of children. So I'm hoping, not for you, Sally, I'm hoping that politicians will, and I know Dave expressed concerns as well, will take this back and say that this could be, you know, be dreadful for Wales and Newport. So I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Evans. Councillor Cox, do you have anything?
I think probably what I was going to say has been partly answered. I think I asked the same committee the question in the audit and governance meeting, basically what my worry had been was that the overall assessments are all green and amber, yet everything that feeds into that, like the performance measures and the risk management data, is all straight red. And it just seemed a contradiction, and I think one reason I was a bit concerned about that is because like all social service departments right across the country, there's been colossal pressure on social services departments with inflation increasing demand. And I know that, I mean, clearly, I think we all acknowledge from the report that came to full council that in Newport social services staff have done an incredible job actually in achieving what they had, considering the pressures are on. And I think part of my worry was I've been looking at this report and thinking, oh, it's all green and amber, everything's looks like it's okay social services because because in many respects it's not. I mean, the staff we're very fortunate the staff here in Newport are managing to still deliver the service, but I don't think we should underestimate the pressures though.
I mean, in some ways, thank you, Councillor Cox, for highlighting the continued pressure that there is within social services, which, as you say, this isn't a Newport issue. This is a national issue in terms of the pressure that we see. I think that we have had some discussions about reporting and performance indicators and challenges within them and how we look at that, particularly as a lot of them are set for us nationally and are very specific. And we have had some discussions about how we might want to explore more appropriate local indicators to really kind of pull out some of the detail, and I think that's work that we need to focus on in a way that is then accessible to yourselves really in terms of members. I think it's a balance, isn't it? Is that I think that staff really are working to do the best they can within a really challenging environment, and there is also something about not wanting to set social services up to be seen as failing when we're not failing, but we are struggling with a level of workload and a level of capacity that is immensely challenging. So there is something about a balance in that I think is difficult to gain in terms of yes, lots of these are green and amber, and then when you come up against the whole thing, you think, oh, hang on a minute, how can that be given the challenges? But that is some indication of how people work, but also how partner agencies, Councillor Mudd referred at the beginning about this is about partnership, this is how we work with citizens, this is how we work with colleagues in other agencies, and it's not just about us, it's about a whole picture across the whole of the city and across other agencies as well. It's a complicated story, this one.
Check if I may respond just in relation to Councillor Cox, you know, how do you make a kind of final assessment on the overall objective? It's tricky, isn't it? Because as you said, you look at a couple of pages and we think, oh, it's red, and you look at the indicators on the whole objective, 16 green, 7 amber, it's a couple of whites because they're new targets, 6 red, and you know, when Paul talks about homelessness shortly, you know we've got huge challenges in homelessness, which again, every authority is not a cohort saying all every authority is in the same boat, but many authorities are, particularly the city authorities or those with, you know, sort of large urban centres. But it's a fair point where you strike that balance, and that, as Sally said, it's not just about the indicator, it's about within our dashboards, the more detailed dashboards for each service areas, how projects are progressing. So you're measuring really stark indicators alongside progress of projects, and that's where, you know, but it is, it's a fair comment, I think, that we just reflect on, you know, as we evaluate the programs going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Jones, for homelessness?
If I could add on objective driven, touched on this earlier on, but we've seen unprecedented demand over the last 18 months. Talking to colleagues across Wales, it really has exploded for the last 18 months, and so services in our council and Oxford, and it's very challenging here. We see a lot of metrics moving in one direction, not something we want, something we're trying to get grips with. Probably should be noted that the last council budget so this year was significant investment in this area from the cabinet, which will be needed. There are positives amongst this though. So the team was new last year with new head service throughout this period, and a big restructuring and a realignment of what that team could deliver. Played out now, and so the service will be better aligned to deliver. We were also successful in the Homewards projects, which is Prince William's charity. That is was a real success story for us, and the hope has allowed us to be in front of trying to find new and innovative ways to shift the dial. But it remains a really big challenge for us. I think it's changed over the last 18 months like it's never changed. And you'll see that in the indicators.
Okay, thank you.
Just a couple of points. The percentage of the private property back into use in long term of 0.4%, if I'm correct. 4 out of 993 properties. Why are we going backwards so much over the past few years? We did have some success. But when you want to come to, I'm just wondering if I'm interpreting the data correctly, why we've, and I know it's been a big priority, it's been raised and extra funding has been given to it. Why can't we seem to, because they blight communities, you have broken window syndrome, you have one house which is derelict and the whole street is affected by it. So
I think you're talking about it's not just the impact on homelessness and housing, and obviously you've got some houses being built, but the vision of those empty properties is critical. But that secondary impact, impacts on cleansing, fee or teams. We haven't done good enough on that. We need to improve and work with that next few years.
If you walk down to Friday or one side of the Trosolwg grounds, you've got accommodation which has been closed for years and boarded up, and that's given us the health talks. And I'm just thinking, we're supposed to have all these meetings together. Surely for emergency accommodation, they could just, open them up and provide short-term accommodation,
I
rather than wrapping around the market.
I feel that the team is effectively engaging in all these. That there's often been a challenging story behind every empty property, even though.
Oh, I'm sure you've got very challenging stories, but you can see them there. There's no students, nurses and people, and they're just being left boarded up to. So I don't expect you, it's university, but it's, surely there must be some way to try that.
So there's one point that there are some new programs to work on our additional funding over next year would help bring those properties up to title standards. It's not simply about invest at see property, is it? It's about bringing them back up to a decent standard people could live in. So we do need to see some improvement, and that we could indicate that, because you're right, for last week it's not.
We've also got 200 people in hotels as well, asylum seekers, and again, not the right accommodation for anybody to be in hotels, and very expensive as well.
Absolutely, but the demand on coming through is greater than before. So there's no pressure on the team, but we need things with other. We need people. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, firstly, point on empty properties, and it is important to acknowledge, and I'm glad that everyone in this room acknowledges the challenge that this presents to us. But I think it's important also to take into account that we shouldn't really make assumptions with regard to empty properties. So to make an assumption that all empty properties are a blight on communities would just be totally inappropriate. Just because a property is empty doesn't necessarily mean that it's a blight on the community. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that. I do want to kind of expand a little bit on the challenges that the service area is presented with, because we cannot ignore the impact of COVID and subsequently the cost of living crisis on service areas, and this is a really good case pinpoint to consider with regard to homelessness. One of the real challenges for the team here in the authority and for every authority across Wales and the UK is an issue of affordability. So we've seen an increase in relationship breakdown post-COVID, post-lockdown. We've also seen people who've been able to afford to rent privately previously now unable to afford their rents because landlords are increasing rents so that they can fund their mortgages. It's a vicious circle, isn't it? And it's really challenging. But critically, I think, for a large number of the people that the local authority provides services to, one of the challenges in relation to supporting them to access the private rental sector is that the local housing allowance is not kept pace with inflation. And that means what we've effectively got, we've got more people, we've got a statutory duty to support, so we're working with them to try and help them. But the pool, in terms of the accommodation that they can access, in terms of affordability, is reducing significantly. And that just further compounds the issues that the team face. It's a particular issue for Newport, of course, because as you know, we're also a dispersal area in terms of migration, and we've had additional pressures on our housing stock across the city from many of the people that we've taken to Newport from the Ukraine. So you can just think about that and think about the cumulative effect on that on service provision. It does impact, and I'm really pleased to say that the new head of service is doing an outstanding job in trying to tackle some of these issues.
So just for clarification, did you say that many of the empty properties aren't by local communities? Or?
That's correct. You can't make an assumption that an empty property is a blight on the community just because nobody lives in it. They're not all in decline or deteriorated beyond repair.
Well, I'm just interested, that's what, because out of the 1,000 we've got in Newport, there's a couple in my ward which are where, from the point of view of rubbish accumulating the neighbourhood itself, vandalism and things like that. it does appear to be a blight. So I'm just interested in what type of buildings you were.
Before we get too far into this one, if you do have a specific query or question, please refer to the service and give a detailed answer rather than bringing it up in solution.
That way, absolutely.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Jones or Mr. Jennings? No? Okay. Okay. Well, being object number one, I believe. Who's doing this?
Okay, so just picking this up, so an inclusive, green and sustainable council, there are 7 strategic priorities within that wellbeing objective, and the overall assessment of where we currently are at the moment is that we make good progress. I did not we've achieved everything we intend to achieve. That means we've set some good foundations as the against this problem. 2 of the 7 strategic priorities are rated as amber. I'll go into detail on those. Delivery of the organisation plan and change plan, that's strategic priority 3. In that report, the climate change plan has come through this committee and update on that. Obviously, that is a significant challenge in order to ensure that we are carbon neutral by 2030. There are specific challenges with that. Strategic priority 1, becoming an inclusive organisation that represents the Newport, providing equitable opportunity, etc. And that is also rated as amber. The following agenda item to this is the annual report update on the strategic quality plan. I'll cover off what the data about Pwyllgor, and that data is also included in this report. Whilst we've undertaken a range of measures over the last 12 months in order to ensure a different range of appointments and employees across the organisation. I still have work to do on that. Although, so within key achievements, we've always had a really good gender pay balance within local authority. It is now for all intents and purposes equal. It's not 1%. I think we probably want to change the way we've expressed this, because I don't think 69% would be the highest paid jobs. I think it's just about 8% of the first 2 jobs are occupied by women. So you've got good gender balance across the organisations. The equality data it's not quite as good. Trying to ensure we've got employee base still represented. Some of the other key achievements, participatory budgeting, talked about in the report. That's a really good news story for Newport, and has been for a few years now. I think £300,000 worth of funding between ourselves and the department has gone out through community groups into community programmes of activity this year. That is something that Newport needs to be really proud of. We've also launched the council new digital strategy. We've got a good record on digital within the organisation and with our schools and with the communities. That tells one side of the story. Also recognised within the report is that, when you guys commence this review of the customer journey, because digital access is one side of that. Actually, what we talk about with this is speed, access to face-to-face services as well. So we reopened the face-to-face centre within town now, so that's obviously a big impact on it. But we've also undertaken this review of the customer journey, because I think that's really important to deliver resources and then another key challenges linked into that then again started to work on the new website development, and that is a real challenge, but something we've got to go right. It's a real opportunity as well. And how we do things. Asset rationalisation, just to say that's real positive that we've making progress on that. I struggle to use the words asset rationalisation as I was using this report, because it is really about asset optimisation. Both Paul's talked about pressures around homelessness, Sally's talked about pressures around eliminate the gender. What we need to ensure is we've got the right assets, with the right services to the right people in the right place. And there's a really intensively data-driven piece of work to ensure that we do make the right decisions with those assets.
Thank you. I don't think we need to go into the IT question. We've had 2 reports of that over the last couple of months. So I think the only thing that we need to talk about is asset use. Questions on that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, 2 points really. I mean, there's always been strategy, and that's a great thing. I can't remember the last data-driven, and the whole strategy is really impressive stuff. But moving on to some of the red, if you like, we'll talk about just clarification. On page 22 of the report, page 57 of the report pack, when we've got the section of managers when taking regular check-ins, they've got a number there, 37.95%. Now, is that 37.99% of managers aren't checking into people, or is it simply staff aren't receiving checks from the managers, and they're not going to let that be? Well, council officers care first and choose well to support employees. Are they getting that information for employee retention?
Okay, that's a really good question. So, and it's a complicated answer, so I'll probably not make it relatively complicated. And the head of service might jump in as if I start saying the wrong things as well. So when you didn't want to type any IT questions, but one of the IT responses, we had a system. Because we enhanced our current HR system, moved that system in line with our previous digital strategy, which was to maximise systems, not have multiple systems. So we've incorporated that check-in process into our trade, which is our HR system. We did that on the run into the pandemic. So we didn't really have enough time, we didn't really have space to prepare that. And I think up until pretty recently, it wasn't a inferior product. I think we were one of the first traces that the local authorities to pick up that modular. So, it wasn't good. We did it, and then the pandemic happened, so we didn't really do it. And we struggled to resolve it. So we've done a lot of development work with the developer on it. It is a lot better now. And we've done a lot of work with managers around how they do that. So that was 37.92% of managers undertaking a monthly check-in with their staff on the system. Right? That wasn't 37.92% of managers having needed to with their managers. That with their staff, that was people then putting around the system in the right way. This is a particular way you have to put it on as well. Something with their check. And it's fair to say this year, if we make some changes, that it was significantly better or better choice.
It's about 60% of those contributors this year. I have to say as well, we set the target too high coming out of COVID to get to 80%.
Yeah, so it was there 80%.
That it's an aspirational target, isn't it? Not to be achieved in one thing. It's really to be
because what it doesn't take account of as well. So what I'm saying is some justification. It isn't good. It's not the same manager would have the weapons, and there were some particular things that would take into consideration this instead of that social services staff have that check-in on a monthly basis anyway, and that's included on WCCF, which is the system they use. Now that is not necessarily the same sort of check-in, but they were out of range. You're absolutely right though to link that to ensure that staff, I think from the opening lines this is about making sure our staff, the well-being of our staff is, it's looked after. So making sure that that is then sort of staff's well-being is taken into consideration. Particularly people who are in a hybrid fashion, we must see it. The development that we're doing things that it will help retain them and develop them. And actually delivering against the objectives of the organisation as well. So it's a really critically important thing that we need to do. And the system is just part of it. Sorry, that wasn't a really long way of answering the question.
Probably just to back up what you were saying, that the use, yeah, so that could be definitely the schools accepted, looking operatives on the dress or operatives or refuge office travel. They wouldn't have a checking in that way on the computer. They only have two hotspots in there and then they can manage them. So those were happening, but that's it, and that we didn't have a way of recording that. So probably so that indicates it tells us a lot of systems, but it's not really important figure, so it's not 60%. Check.
And I suppose that, you know, part of the reason for doing this report now, because the regulations have changed, but also it's good practice. It's in just now self-assessment as well. So actually, we picked up those things and we've done a series of sessions with the CMT and managed to then tweak around how we do make changes to the system to make sure it picks up the data better. So, you know, as part of that, it's, you know, it's just being able to do it. But the point you make about the importance of it is absolutely good.
It's coming up in the next report. I think it's particularly relevant to this. We seem to have a 20% or nearly 20% turnover of staff. So, you know, part of the reason for having these manager jobs, check-ins, toolbox results is to try and keep down that turnover and feel valued. So, you know, isn't 20% a very high percentage of staff turnover for anybody?
20% turnover, that's really good.
So it's not, it's in the next report.
We'll have to pick that up. I don't recognise the figure, but we'll have to look at it. I think any organisation has turnover anyway, and we normally run between sort of 10 and 15% turnover. It's the unplanned turnover that is the bit that raises concern.
I did take the one over 75
but also because, you know, grant funding will come to an end and it's etc. And people reduce the leave, and you know the bits. I mean, I think there's some stuff in there. There is some stuff in the report around the exiting data. That's really critically important. We're going to pick out the people for particular reason, but we wouldn't think about it.
Okay. So, Mr. Owen, how are you going to deal with the self-assessment of governance and performance arrangements?
I think obviously the annual report is the you know, that is the main product of the annual governance procedures. Scrutiny play a role in that, as do governance more as a committee. And I think as a secretary, certainly from an officer perspective, we manage management teams, risk and performance management, and when they report into the executive leadership team. And we also meet as a corporate management team to review performance. But as I said, we've also inserted as part of that cyclical process to align with scrutiny, scrutiny review performance officer reviews in detail as well. Is that what you were looking for, Chair?
This is your report. This is ways in it. So we've gone through the 4 objectives, and we know we're going to do the final line of the report. Self-assessment from page 46 on.
Stage. Okay.
Okay, well, can I just say, I think it's a great picture that nobody's mentioned what I think is one of the promising bits of this section, and that is about progressive procurement. It's I think somebody should mention it. I think it's one of the most exciting things happening in sort of local government, and it's not just in the UK, it's happening in the States and all sorts of places where councils are instead of giving the money to people who have often take it somewhere else, are actually spending it and developing their own communities and jobs in their own communities and promoting their own values in their own communities. I think, you know, that really is quite exciting. I look forward to reading on the progress that she has reported for the chairs started on this committee.
I think So if, yeah, we going on fill in some of the sort of detailed gaps, we again, because I've got a point well made, isn't it, that perhaps we're not you know, sufficiently emphasising some of the more positive aspects of the report, but it is that balancing act, and particularly when we have the conversations with Scrutiny and Governance Management Committee, that's teased out. So, you know, as I alluded to, as I said earlier, we've had the continuous improvement in the performance and the governance arrangements. And the governance statement shows that the council has effective arrangements in place. But we have, through the corporate plan and the annual report, identified areas for improvement, and they are set out in both this report and the annual governance statement as well. So as I mentioned, the directorate management teams, exec leadership team, and also we've got a new performance and planning policy in place as well to support the council's corporate plan delivery. We want to make sure that the service plans, as they always are, fully aligned to the corporate plan. And again, as it's come through to their relevant scrutiny committees, obviously that's for committee members to scrutinise and provide us with effective feedback. So the committee obviously we presented an update the progress in the corporate plan today. And then, you know, obviously we will reflect upon your feedback, ensure that that's captured before the report is then progressed up into cabinet, and then obviously on to our regulators such as SD, auditors, etc. And obviously running concurrently with that, as all members know, the office team has already started to move on the medium-term financial plan and to look at the situation for 24-25. So that will run concurrently. So obviously in terms of the next steps, as we said, we'll make sure that whatever feedback has been received and committed to bill, we'll feed that back into the final iteration of the report as well, Chair. We just want to add to the answer.
I think that's pretty interesting. The report, it goes into the actions for improvement for 23-24 because it's up by the way forward and with the that and include all of those things. So it's the and the annual governance statement, it's still regular performance reviews, our performance, our risk management framework, etc. Bring all that together. So we've got list of actions to improve into 23-24. So really no considerations. I think it's looking at that and state literature, the recommendations you as part of the process. What you've got, sorry, Chase, to say what you've got the previous is that actions to improve against them. So then there's the unknowns of this but based on itself.
And of course, we have attended as well on the unfavourable actions of the group. You know, you've got so much good stuff in here, which I was hoping you were going to tell us all about, but next year.
Next year.
Thank you. Right, I think that completes this section. We can touch months of week and talk about the conclusions. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon.
Chair, thank you.
Basically, my study.
Give us a look at you. Everyone's like,
Thanks for picking up the thing about this. It was like, it was on my list of things to look at. It's a little bit of the procurement.
All right.
that wasn't meant as a criticism.
So in my list of things.
You can't mention every single point in the report like that.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. But it's really easy.
What about the do you know some that's units was it Good afternoon. Hey, yes, please.
Thanks everyone. Thanks colleagues for going to do some introductions. We've got Janice Jarrett, who was the policy and partnership lead. We've got Amanda from HR, who does a lot of the equalities with this part of the strategic
Equalities Group. And obviously, we've done Tally, I think, Cyfarfod, who's the Equalities Lead, and the Head of Service for that area, and this is obviously the Director. I'll start and then I'll hand over to Janice to just take you through those details on item 2. So this is our penultimate annual report on the current Strategic Equalities Plan. So typically at committee, we've got lots of questions about things that are not in the plan. And for once, we'll be able to say, well, that's great, because we're writing a new plan. We'll read shortly. And that plan, by the way, comes to this committee for sign off. So the current plan goes to an end in 2024. So Jan, do you want to take us through the report and changes made since last year in the committee's comments?
So can I just ask what the progress will be? It comes to us for sign off after it's into cabinet, or it comes to us?
Comes to you for review. That would be my proposal, that it comes to you for review once we've got a draft, and we'll outline kind of what has to be in it and so on, and then we take it to cabinet with the committees.
Thank you.
So thanks, Tracy. So as part of our duties under the Equality Act, we are required to produce and publish an annual report outlining the progress we've made against each of the equalities objectives that we set out in our plan. Even though that's a legal requirement, obviously is much more important for us as a kind of performance measurement tool and an incentive to keep improving. So there's 2 reasons for the annual report. It's on pages 95 to 129 of your packs, and hopefully we've got the page numbers right for this one, so we should be okay. Sets out a summary of key achievements against each of our objectives and outcomes, and then a detailed update on the work for each. Kind of throughout before we go into our workforce equality information, which I know you've looked at, Jane. So as Tracy mentioned, this is the 3rd year of delivery. So during the year, progress is monitored by the Strategic Equalities Group, and we have members from elected members and officers across all service areas on that group to make sure that we're staying on track and keeping to our objectives. So the 6 objectives are leadership, governance and involvement, customer service and access, representative workforce, community cohesion, living well and independent living. So on pages 98 to 100, you'll see a summary of the achievements, and this gives some highlights from each of the objectives. So the things that we're particularly happy with is the changes and kind of amount of people that we've supported through training.
So I understand we've got a numbering query again. What numbers are we talking about? Yes. It's on your problem. We've got several different numbering systems.
What was the
Page
4 of the actual? So it should be page 98 of the.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, really pleased with the numbers of people who supported the training, both elected members and officers, and some of the changes that we are making or made to policies. The reopening of the in-person support in the central library has been a real positive, and enabling that physical access for people of Newport. We've mentioned the closure of the gender pay gap in the last report, and we've provided, there's lots of support being provided to our more vulnerable pupils, which you would have seen throughout the education aspect, and also our specialist support for citizens being housing support and grants, and particularly around victims of domestic abuse. So there's further detail under each of those objectives there on page 101 to 118, along with what we want to, what we're hoping to concentrate on for this next financial year. And as Tracy mentioned, we're also starting to work on our new plan, which needs to be published by April 2024. So I'm going to hand you over to Don next. He's going to talk about the changes that we made to this report following last year's Scrutiny Committee comments, and also some of the next steps.
Do you have any particular questions at this point?
Well, I've got good questions on the report. I don't know if they
Check them at the end and if there's more specific.
Thank you, Chair. So the report closes with our staff equality data analysis and information on our continued commitment to address underrepresentation within the workforce. This will be a key objective within our new strategic equality plan and people plan, both to be published in 2024 and as part of our corporate plan published during this reporting period. We thank the Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee for the feedback provided last year when we presented the previous annual report. Based on feedback, we have improved the content and the structure of this year's report. Some of the improvements we've made based on the committee's feedback include providing more information about the Strategic Equalities Group and its role in supporting the Council's progress in achieving the equality objectives in our SEC, reviewing the statistical data provided in the report to address any anomalies, and providing information about the ongoing work that officers are doing to identify and remove any barriers to retention. For example, the review of the employee exit process with staff networks. We plan to expand the breadth of benchmarking data included in this year's report. However, we're still discussing the changes to benchmarking data available and best practices with the Welsh Local Government Association and other stakeholders. We hope to include this information in future reports. I would like to invite members to ask any questions and agree for this report to be presented to Cabinet and Council for further discussion before adoption and publication in line with statutory timescales. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Newton.
I thought this, first of all, yes, this report is greatly improved since last year, and we will look at data from different times of the year, and so that has been find out that that's a great improvement. So well done, change. Thank you.
Councillor Cox.
The questions were always to ask. I was interested under the section on education, which I think is on page 18 of the report and 112 of the pack. The section on education focuses, I think, largely on three things: on attendance, on exclusions, and on needs. What I just couldn't understand is it didn't include attainment, because the whole reason there's such concern about attendance because it affects attainment, and exclusion affects attainment. Needs speak for themselves. They probably those young people have not attained. That's why they leave that school without any qualifications. And the whole purpose of schools is pupil achievement, pupil attainment, and I just can't understand why that isn't a feature of this section on education. Because having spent a career in education, it just seems to me that the whole purpose of education is to get pupils to attain and achieve. And I know it's got a little more difficult recently because a lot of the traditional measures that we use in school, like SATs tests, etc., are not there. But there's still plenty of data there. I mean, GCSE results are still there, A-level results are still there, and even in primary schools, but in Wales, it's a statutory requirement that the children are tested each year as well. So there does seem to me there's plenty of data there that could be aggregated to give us a view on how equalities is working in education. For example, are particular groups, ethnic groups underachieving, boys at universities, girls, etc., etc. The whole field, isn't it, which is traditionally collected, and I couldn't understand why that wasn't in there.
Right, before you try to answer that one, does this go to another committee somewhere? Would this? No. So this is a national issue to get on.
John is taking that.
Police.
Yeah, so I'm not sure why it wasn't in the last plan, but it wasn't seen as one of the objectives within the last plan. Definitely something that I take your point, Councillor, and I think we do need to look at it in the next plan that we're developing now. It will be in other education reports, but I'm not sure it would come to. Well, no, it would come to this committee, wouldn't it? But yeah, taking my, you're right, that is one of the main points. I know that the Welsh Government paused, didn't they, the reporting during COVID, the mandatory reporting of those standards, but that doesn't mean those results. Doesn't mean we haven't got them, but that was paused. But yeah, we can certainly provide them and make sure they're integrated in next year's report.
What we don't want to do is overlook this committee, and if there's a link, we're perfectly happy with that because we've trying to condense our reports here,
Yeah.
but we're perfectly happy with accept links, providing them with the course. But you want to?
Yeah, those good make the links work. I educational attainment will be covered off by the place that people call a scrutiny committee. However, I think it's a valid question for this, because actually this plan is about the equality plan, and it's actually how we ensure equality across a range. I think one of those is also schools, and I think it's a valid point that that data is the sort of data you know where the issues were, and actually also direct some of your interventions. So yeah, I think that's a good question.
Well, it's not so much necessarily maybe I was looking for that data to be in this report, but the report talks about how the authority collects data on attendance and how it's collecting it on exclusion, etc., etc. And the results of that process may appear elsewhere. I appreciate that, but it doesn't.
Yes, right.
The process is mentioned here about how there's some sort of handle kept on attainment in relation to, well, to each opportunity.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point. I look, we use an education rep on this review all these. I don't know what the explanation for having that data is.
I guess in any one quality within everything, isn't it? I often hear you ask questions about all sorts of different subjects. So I guess in any 1 4-year period, we have to focus on certain things, which is not to say that qualities is not important in the hundreds of other things the council do. And at that time when this was written, that was the focus. So I think probably the committee's recommendation is you would want to see that in the new plan.
Well, yeah, just a mention of how the authority does actually monitor the equality of achievement in schools.
I think just to give some context in terms of this equality objectives, when setting the objectives, we worked with the Equality Human Rights Commission and looking at the equality priorities within Wales, and attendance and exclusion was identified. So that's been included within our objective and our actions. But similar to what Tracy and Janice have mentioned, it is something that we can discuss within our new policy plan to make sure we incorporate that and that data is included.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are we going to all the objectives or just general comments?
They've done their report, so
Yeah, if I could please, Chair. Just a couple of things. When we're talking about looking after the vulnerable learners and independent living, which is very important, trying to keep people in their homes. I'm a little bit concerned that we tend to forget that not everybody is IT literate, and we seem to be stopping, an elderly resident who couldn't phone up to say there would be misconnection nowadays. So, is there more we could be doing to ensure that we're not leaving behind a small but significant minority of elderly people who do not have access to IT, who should not be embarrassed in asking their sons or daughters-in-laws, can you do that on my behalf? Because, I've heard that so many times. So perhaps you can feed that back, that there are, a significant percentage of the population who are actually being, let's say, I'm choosing my words wisely, we're not being looked after as equally as others in the community. And I think that you could send that back to the authorities, because it's quite obviously tears phone girl if she couldn't actually do something. She doesn't want to rely on some doctor who doesn't call or somebody else. So perhaps you could feed that back. And a couple of positive things on the Pride March.
Sorry, this is a theme that's come through this committee previously, and it was not going to be expressed at the last one by the IT strategy.
Yeah, shall I just respond? So again, I was alluding to that when I was giving feedback on objective 4. section of that in the previous report. So I suppose we have a couple of bits from it. So one is, which I've said in this committee and other committees on numerous times over the last 40 years. The more people who can use IT to access services, but again, using IT to access services, the better. Because what that releases then is the capacity of the other end to support people who actually do need to have support. But that's the one. And then the second bit is, we should shortly be embarking on, just to go through the commissioning process at the moment, we should shortly be embarking on this end-to-end customer service review, which will pick those things up. There's more you've really got to be able to. But that objective talks about is fair access, and that's got to be about ensuring the right people again, the right sort of access to services, rather than what can be being on through at the moment. So absolutely what you're saying.
Yeah.
And
So just for clarification, when somebody could phone up like this, been collections and it's easier, do we record the number of people who contact using the phone to report it and tell them they can't use the service anymore? Is that as important as
I can ask the question. We've got all sorts of data.
I just think it's important to monitor just how many people are actually phoning up and told they can't use the service anymore.
Yeah, I think what we've got is, some really clear evidence that more and more people are able to use services. But it just I don't take away from your first point. So I think what it means is position of the one services pointed at people. Yeah.
Start getting.
Oh, no, that was just a positive thing to say how you're organised.
Well, please say it was positive.
Yes. It's pretty negative, but I thought it went really well, and thank everybody who was involved in it.
Thanks. So that, and that was community event, but a lot of us volunteered.
Yes,
So yeah, thanks. That was really positive to see that.
Yeah.
That's right. You have no answer. Councillor Cox.
I know I've mentioned this before in other committees, but a lot of work's done in this report, and obviously it's been done very systematically. It's been thought out in detail. A lot of thought's been put into the various aspects of the report. And I was interested in the section on, I think it's on page 25 of the report, on starts there on the use of data. And again, there's a really well thought out description of the processes which the council uses or could potentially use to collect data on things like the take up of services, which is etc. But none of that data was in there, but there was a great detail in terms of data relating to the council's workforce, which was very interesting. Well, that was the only section on which data was given in that kind of detail, and on to the other services that really there's a lot. There's a description of policies and procedures and approaches to promote equality, but no actual. Even though the report talks in detail about the data, the process used to collect data, none of the data was used actually to comment on progress or comment on priorities, except for the council's workforce.
Well, the council workforce is one of the statutory requirements of the report, so that's why there's so much emphasis on that one, whereas obviously the rest isn't part of the statutory responsibilities for the report. So that's the kind of first bit. Donald, I don't know if you want to take the second bit of that.
So within the report, bits and pieces of the data that you find in the different information have informed the information within objectives. For example, the information from our systems informed the customer services section, which is on objectives, and in terms of our impact assessments, the information from our fairness and equality impact assessments informs our strategic decision making. So the data that's outlined in that section influences the council's strategic decision making and is reported on in other platforms, for example, within the corporate plan report within service area plans. So it wouldn't be specifically be included within this report, but it would also feature in other reports in more detail.
But just for future use, you know, one might have restored that, if you just told us where we could find this stuff. Well, I think these is that interesting. You know?
I mean, I'd be interested, Chair, because I mean, it's not been an issue, obviously, it interests me, though, I wish it would be qualitative. I hope it's one reason why we're all on the council to make sure that we provide equal services to people of Newport. But I've never seen that kind of data written down anywhere apart from for the council's workforce. And if it is elsewhere, I'd be very interested to see, because you know, as a councillor, being asked to make a judgment on whether we are providing services equitably and that they're being taken up in an equitable fashion, that okay, you can report to me and tell me that the data shows this, but I think you know, I don't be unreasonable for councillors actually to. Well, speaking for myself, I'd feel more comfortable as well if I saw some of the data as well, which is underpinning many of the strategies the council's following.
Okay. Thank you very much for correcting my arithmetic. So the only time you think it's on the yeah, it's just 15.7% turnover. But the point, the more general point I wanted to make was I believe quite a high turnover. We used to have it as a normal turnover, and put so much pressure on your officers, HR officers, managers, all the recruiting process, all the training process. And you know, it really should be something we try to get a lower figure for that.
You are absolutely right, and I think Amanda's probably correct me. The challenge we've got. So you're absolutely right. We want to recruit talent and we want to retain talent. That's the priority. An organisation like the council and the sorts of things that we've been in mind, you know, 2/3 of that workforce will be working in schools, and the rest are going to be delivering 860 services, and the turnover rates in each of those will be significantly different. And some of that is healthy, and some of it isn't so healthy. But I don't know if we've got a breakdown in all of that and the across.
Would you be able to obtain that data in terms of a breakdown? There's a variety of reasons, like in terms of how we've worked in looking particularly at that quality and understanding of why people move on. And we do task HR and the business partners to speak to their service areas. So we do, it's not just a case of collecting the data, it's actually analysing the feedback from those individuals. Some are leaving, but for the opportunities that we've actually looked at the development of employees and given them that opportunity, perhaps at that time, we don't have that post for them to move into, but they had a real positive experience of working with us. So it's a case of us looking at that data and making sure that we are picking up on if there are positives and negatives in making sure that we are supportive of the workforce.
And of course, this snapshot of data doesn't talk about redundancy and things like that, where we've got an imperative to try to cross-match people into vacancies.
We absolutely would try, whenever we're looking at any situation where somebody's potentially at risk or unplaced, we would be looking to redeploy and work with them, and obviously with training with the colleagues to try to ensure there's nobody's on places at the end of the process. But certainly in challenging budget situations, I think regrettably there is sometimes a factor, but I think it's something we almost try and redeploy and ensure that nobody's on place where possible.
Thank you for that assurance. Does anybody else have it? No? Thank you very much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's all.
Okay, so I'll just go through what I think to our policy recommendations for each section, just to make sure I've got everything one down. So the first thing I got down was start obviously with our corporate wellbeing report, was that definitive answer on how visitor numbers are calculated. The chief exec did say that it used to be a system, but I will ask to get a definitive answer. There was the recommendation to include the scoring for favours in the same way they did with the highways in the report going forward. But wrote that as a recommendation. There was also the recommendation for rewording after the report to highlight success more appropriately, namely the progressive procurement section and the heritage offer. I was going to the comments, and I'm unsure whether the committee feel like it's more appropriate as a recommendation about the presentation of performance measures and overall measures. So I think it was you, Councillor Cox, who highlighted that the performance measures were a mix between reds and orange and ambers and greens, and the overall measures were green and ambers. So
some of the basically the data feeding that it's straight red, but I think the point she was making that those are in some ways reflecting the challenge that the staff are working on, but they're still keeping the service work.
So maybe just highlighting the importance of noting that in the report. And that's what I've got for the annual corporate wellbeing report. Is there anything I've missed or anything you want to highlight there?
I'd like to add something.
Yeah.
So raise it as more of a formatting thing rather than anything particular. But so on pages 75 of the pack, and when it's the achievements, I mean, report is ranked, then you come to this table, and then using green and white to also indicate different months, so that can be seen as, because sometimes white is a new target.
Yeah.
So when it comes to indicating different months, maybe a different colour to use rather than green, because it looks like green's achieved in November, but
right.
It's just
Just a change in the table, even if it was all white or.
yeah, I mean, the colour's being used to separate the months, but it can be. Well, when I first looked at it, November was great, but what's happened in December?
But this one, can we take this forward to the chairs meetings when we look at all the committees and look at getting a consistent report format? Because we get reports and actually, you know, obviously everyone is different because different people write them, but there should be some sort of consistency in just the underlying that comes in.
I just want to assure you, Chair, that standardisation in reporting, so we are discussing at the minute just as a scrutiny team of the AN, but we will take it as a point of our meeting.
Is that something I've got wrong?
And could you, I'm sure it can be solved, having two different page number things.
Yeah, I think that's part of the standardisation really and truly is asking for.
Yeah, I can't understand what we've got the problem with. No,
Absolutely.
you've got page 5 on one report and page 4 on a different report, but it's the same report, but it's the way they format it.
From my perspective, when I obviously make these agendas up, we put them into a system, we make sure everything's right, and the system creates the agenda for us. So that's what generates the big page number, if you will. The problem is when reports come like the annual corporate self-assessment, with the page numbers so integral to the indexing of the report and being able to find your way around, it would be, well, it feels like it would be detrimental to remove those page numbers in favour of our own, if you know what I mean. But there's some reports I take where they're not unnecessarily big and I can take them out. That's absolutely fair.
Well, let's make a suggestion that if we're going to get multi-reports, we'd have A/1 and go on from there, you know, and B and C, whatever you needed. At least let's get away from this multi-numbering system.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just, as you say, people's ability to I can't understand how this afternoon could be between what we're talking about.
That's the other with officers Right, so
Thank you.
take that forward.
Okay.
You mind if I go to finally?
Yes.
Qualities plan. Regards the recommendation of use of detainment data going forward in the next plan, not in the next report. So it's more of a highlight in the next strategic governance plan. And committee wanting to highlight the importance that we're not leaving anyone behind by relying on any digital inclusions.
And if possible, can we refer that back to our last report where I think
Yeah.
Councillor Davis said more or less the same. Yeah.
So highlighting that it's being raised in multiple forums.
Yeah.
No problem.
And also just find out, as a matter of interest, because we didn't know whether we do actually record the figures of people who phone up and
Yeah,
tell them they can't.
that's my next instruction.
Yeah, thank you.
So recording the number of people who get in contact by phone. And that's what I've got for the strategic qualities. Is there anything we do around there?
Can I refer you back then to the recommendations to the committee on the annual corporate plan? The council's progress towards achieving its mission statement. To deliver ambitious, fair and green Newport for everyone's corporate plan 2022-27. Are we content with the progress? Yeah. Yeah. Councillor Potts, we're content with the reading.
I'm sorry.
So she's just going through the.
Actually, not going to be forward, page 14 on the other one.
Page
In the park,
in the pack.
right.
Right. So,
There we are. Just lots of great.
yeah. So we content with the first point?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah. Okay. Right. What about the second point? Sufficient information? Well, we've made some recommendations, but generally we're content. There was enough information there. Considering the report's self-assessments, well, they didn't touch on it in their verbal deliberations, but there was a lot of good stuff in there. So I suppose.
Well, I think there was quite a bit of evidence of self-assessment there, wasn't it?
No, she didn't report on it.
No, she didn't. No, it's in the.
Yeah, I asked it, and we've sent out comments. Yeah. Okay. And going on to the strategic equalities plan. Full fair and accountability comes to progress. Yeah, I'm not going to say there wasn't.
I think it's just something peculiar about me. I like looking at tables and things, but we were told that the data is collected and it's used to form decisions, but I would be happier with just some reference to, so for example, we collected data on, I don't know, the use of this particular service, and it showed that this particular group was not making use of it, therefore we have done this. But I couldn't honestly see any reference to that data was used to shape services at all.
So with. Right, yeah. So that'll be a recommendation for any case studies of data collection and subsequent change.
I thought, apart from the council's workforce, I couldn't see anywhere else in the report. I stand to be corrected, but I couldn't see anywhere else in the report where there were any flat figures given to illustrate, to support the particular point or the particular strategy that is being adopted, which I thought. If this data has been collected in a systematic way that's been described, I think that it would be used then to back up to support some aspects of the report. I'm not looking for, I wasn't looking for like 20 pages of tables or anything like that, but I mean, other members may not feel the same, but
well, this is something that's perhaps better probed when we get something sent to us on the way up, rather than with hindsight, you know, that there'll be a report coming to us just now about future inequalities, and then we can ask the question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Quite.
We can. Just wondering how we want to know this. Is it that we want? Obviously, it's in reference to the next plan, isn't it? It's not really to do with this. Is it that you want more contextual data strategies in the next plan?
Well, I mean, I would feel it, yes. I mean, I feel I do, but I'm saying that not everybody may feel the same.
I think Councillor Andrew determined against that.
I think the balance, just bear in mind we had 140 pages today to look through. And if you click on the links, you can probably go to several million by the time you got there. We would try to keep it as succinct as possible, but I agree about evidence-based. If you're saying you've had a successful so-and-so, then that should be evidence.
As you go, maybe what was suggested by one of the officers, which I'd be quite happy with, is if in this report they describe how evidence is collected, and then the evidence is actually used in the appropriate place, you know, so when the report that might include education has the education evidence there, or the report that might relate to something, I don't know, some aspects of council services, that the evidence to support that is with that report. But
personally, I thought that we didn't need those pages and pages and pages of information. It should be a couple of headlines saying we're either very bad at this or we're good at that. And just leave it at that, because we don't need reams and reams of you know, the nationalities and one person from wherever it is, Timbuktu, or, you know, it's not really relevant to our role.
Well, we're fast forwarding to budget consultation now. So, and when the committee's looked at this over the years, we've been less than impressed with where the information has come from. And this is something that we've commented on in the past, but without a great deal of expensive data research, it's not likely to come to our satisfaction, and we must be mindful of spend pressures.
So, committee be happy if I note that as recommending more evidentiary data for changes or improvements? Or
I'll link to more. Are we happy with links?
Links good.
Yeah, links are good, and then whoever's got an interest.
Okay.
Okay.
That's noted. And that's all I've got then, Chair.
Yeah.
Around conclusions.
So does the annual report highlight the ongoing commitment to equalities, focusing on appropriate successes? They're a bit light on successes, to be honest, but what do you think?
Yes, I think it does. I mean, yeah.
Okay.
We've ticked off our point 4 there, Chair.
Top of one.
We've ticked off point 4 there, whether we've got our comments and recommendations as well.
Yeah. Okay. So that's done that one. Thank you. Now we're looking at now yours, Samantha.
Yeah, sorry.
There seem to be quite a few
Yes.
actions from previous meetings, and it's not your fault because you chased them.
Yes, absolutely, Chair. We've obviously ticked off another one this morning with the materials for digital skills and inclusion that was circulated to committee. I am waiting on a number of actions from our climate change report item. Any minutes still be saying she'll respond, she's chasing it with victims. So fingers crossed we'll have that as soon as we can. No updates in terms of the forward work programme, just those two additional items we discussed in the last meeting. And our next meeting now is the 27th of October for the Equality Action Plan and the Transformation Plan.
Can we not equally need to chase up, it shouldn't be Samantha's, to chase up on behalf of the committee, because we should get, before a month, we should get responses from officers on these committees. So can we leave to chase these ones up and ensure any actions we have for the next meeting are done before?
Yes,
No, so you, Chair, on our behalf, because it's unfair on an officer to chase senior officers. It's far more appropriate for you, on our behalf, to chase them up. Because with the greatest respect, if anybody's to say, oh, you know, I'm going to chase the chief executive, or I'm going to and you send them an email, then it's not going to have the same effect as the chair of the committee.
yeah, if Samantha will draft the emails for me, I'll certainly.
If everybody else is in agreement,
No, I don't see one reason for that.
thank you.
Or from each of us.
So, sorry, you said the 27th of the 10th, and you said something about equalities.
But it's policy actually, right?
Equalities, right.
Policy on the mind.
Thank you very much, and the rest are as read, are they?
Mhm.
Okay. I'm going to list from the agenda. Thank you.